Okay, we can start the class. We don't have a PPT for today's class. Okay, let me join. So this course is Introduction to English Literature, right? Introduction to English Literature. Can someone just send me a message whether, yes, okay. So Introduction to English Literature. We have 5 blocks in this course. This is a foundational course, the Functional English Foundation course. We have 5 blocks and we will be dealing with each block. First, we have block 1, literary terms. Do you all have textbook with you? Do you have your textbooks? Yes, okay. It would be better if you could take your textbook because you don't have a PPT for today's class. From tomorrow's class onwards, there will be PPT. So first, we are going to discuss about the basic literary terms, the basic terms in literature. And this would help you understand the coming lessons very easily. Not only this subject, in coming subjects also in the coming semesters, you will be dealing with a lot of these terms. So we can start from A. If you want, I can make a PP, I can just type it out. Just give me a second. Can you see the screen? I mean, it's just a blank word screen. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So I'll just type out, okay, I'll just type out the words that we are going to deal with now. So the first word is allegory. Allegory. So allegory is a story in which the characters represent abstract qualities or ideas. So it is kind of a story. Allegory is a kind of story where we have characters, then that characters represent some qualities, abstract qualities. For example, we have Ramayana. And in Ramayana, we have major 2 characters, right? Ravana and Rama. Ravana represents evil, right? Evil is that abstract quality. Rama represents goodness. Goodness is that abstract quality. So in some stories, there will be certain characters and these characters will represent some qualities, abstract qualities. That is called allegory. Next is alliteration. Alliteration is mainly used in poetry. When you study poems, when you deal with poetry, you will come across this term alliteration. It is the repetition of first consonants in a group of words. So when you write a poem, in one sentence, we can just call it a one sentence, in one line, if the consonant sounds are repeated, it is called alliteration. Okay. The repetition of consonant sounds is called alliteration. Next term is allusion. Allusion. Allusion refers to something or someone, often from another literary work. When you read a book, when you read a novel, or when you read a story, or when you read a poetry, sometimes there will be reference to someone else, reference to something or someone from another literary work, another book. That is called allusion. A reference. Allusion is a reference. reference of someone or something from another literary work. Okay. Next is anachronism. So anachronism means against time. So something out of its chronology. When you say something, if something comes out of the chronological time period, it is called anachronism. Okay. So when something is set against the time or something out of its chronological order, it is called anachronism. Next is anachronism. Anachronism. So anachronism is used mainly in tragedy. So you will know that there is drama. Drama are of different kinds. We have tragedy, comedy, and this anachronism comes in tragedy. So it refers to a moment when there is some special revelation. So the character discovers something. So discovery, or a moment when the main character discovers something about himself. If the character is learning something new about himself or herself, it is called anachronism. Okay, anachronism is a discovery or a special revelation about oneself. It is mainly used in tragedy, that is anachronism. So are you understanding this? I'm just asking you. Are you getting this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, fine. If you don't get anything, just let me know, okay? Next is anagram. Okay, next is anagram. Anagram is a form of word play. What you do is letters, and we have a word, and the letters of the words can be rearranged to make a new word. So anagram, here you can rearrange the words, you rearrange the letters of the word to make another word. For example, I'll just give you an example. State. State is a word. And what I do is I am changing the words. T-A-S-T-E. See, both these words have same letters, but it is two different words. So that is anagram, a form of wordplay in which letters of a word or a phrase can be rearranged to make a new word. That is called anagram. Next is analogy. Analogy is a comparison. We are comparing something in which an idea, a thing, or a person is compared to another in order to make it clear. When we compare something with something else, it is an analogy. Okay. For example, when you go to a traffic signal, you will see different colors, right? There will be red, green, orange. So what is that? When you see green, what does it mean? Green is to go, right? As red is to stop. See, here as, the word as is used. That is a comparing word. As is a comparing word. So here we are saying green, we are comparing two different colors, right? Green is to go, red is to stop. So it is an idea and concept. When you say green, when you remember green, you will remember that it is to go. Whenever you see red, it means to stop. So when you compare two different things, here the idea and concept is compared. That is called analogy. Next is Anapest. Yeah, Anapest is a device used in poetry. It is a device used in poetry. Here, when you study poetry in detail, I don't know if you have came across poetry in your earlier sessions. There are different kinds of devices in poetry. We have different syllables. We count syllables in a poem. And there are stressed syllables and unstressed syllables. In a poem, we have stressed and unstressed syllables. Stressed syllables are represented by a slash mark, and an unstressed syllable is represented by U shape. Okay. U is unstressed and slash is stressed. So what is Anapest means? Here, two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. This is Anapest. U represents unstressed. The slash represents stressed. So Anapest is two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. That is Anapest. Okay. And next is Anaphora. Anaphora. Anaphora is a literary device or a rhetorical device in which a word or a group of words is represented at the beginning of a sentence to add emphasis and create an artistic effect. So when you want to say something very important, when you have a particular phrase or a sentence, group of words that you use in the beginning, when you start, it is repeated in the beginning. It is repeated in the beginning to add emphasis. To add an emphasis, it creates an artistic effect. For example, Martin Luther King said a speech, famous speech. He says that I have a dream. And this I have a dream, that phrase is being repeated several times in order to give a dramatic effect. When you come more into literary, we have Mark Antony talking about Brutus. But Brutus is an honorable man. He repeats that. And that gives a dramatic or artistic effect. That is called anaphora. Now we have anecdote. Anecdote. Anecdote is a short, interesting story. It is a very short story. And this has an amusing event that tries to support or demonstrate some point. It is a very short, interesting story. At the same time, it will have an amusing event, and that tries to demonstrate a point. It supports a point. For example, you might be familiar with the story of the hare and the tortoise. The hare and tortoise goes on a running race, and the hare is going fast and it takes rest. By that time, the tortoise wins the race. So you know that story, right? So here, whenever you hear the story, the hare and the tortoise, you know that slow and steady wins the race, right? It is not the, you have to, even if you go slowly, you can win a race. So that kind of story is giving, right? So it is a short and interesting story and an amusing event that tries to support or demonstrate some point. That is anecdote. Next is antagonist. So antagonist is the villain of the story. The main character is called protagonist, that we will see when we come to P. Protagonist is the main character and antagonist is the opposite of protagonist. So he or she will be the villain character. Antagonist is the major character who opposes the protagonist in a story or play. So the villain character is called antagonist. Next is antithemeria. Antimeria. Antimeria is a replacement of one part of speech with another. So part of speech, you know, right? We have noun, we have verb, noun, verb, adjective, all these are parts of speech. So when you replace one part of speech with another, it is called antimeria. So if, for example, you change the noun to a verb or verb to a noun, you know Google, right? You are I hope you are very familiar with Google. So Google is a noun, right? Google is it's a name. It's a name of the search engine. So Google is a name. But what we say when we search something, we say that I Googled it. I Googled it. That is a sentence. So here I Googled it. Here Googled it is verb. So the noun is replaced by the verb. That is antimeria. Next is anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphic is similar to personification. Here, certain human characteristics features are attributed to non-human things or to objects, especially to animals. In anthropomorphism, In anthropomorphism, certain human qualities are attributed to non-human objects. Non-human or objects, especially animals. That is anthropomorphism. You know Tom and Jerry, right? Tom and Jerry, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Jungle Book. So there are animals, but these animals are given some human qualities. That is anthropomorphism. Next is anticlimax. Anticlimax. A narrative technique. This is a narrative technique. It is also a literary device in which expectations are raised. Anticipation is built up, but then there's a sudden disappointing event that lets down the expectation. So anticlimaxes, you will be having some expectation, this story is going to end like this. This is going to happen now. We are anticipating. We are very much expecting something to happen, but at the end, what happens? A disappointing event happens, and all your expectation will be let down. That is called anticlimax. Then we have anti-hero. Anti-hero is a person who lacks positive qualities. See, when you talk about hero is a person who has lot of positive qualities. That person will have courage, fortitude, physical prowess. So he will basically be a protagonist. So anti-hero is a person who lacks all positive qualities. This person only has negative qualities. But he is not a villain. We can't call him villain, but this person is very evil. This person doesn't have any positive qualities. Even it can be the protagonist. Even the protagonist can also be anti-hero. This person lacks positive qualities. Next is anti-metabol. Anti-metabol. It is a literary term or device that involves repeating a phrase in reverse order. When you repeat a phrase in reverse order, it is called anti-metabol. For example, there is a famous line called eat to live. We are eating to live. Eat to live, not live to eat. Sorry, not live to eat. See, eat to live is a sentence or a phrase, and it is being repeated in the reverse order, live to eat. So that is example of anti-metabol. Then we have antiphrasis. Antiphrasis. Antiphrasis is the use of phrase or words in their opposite sense or the literal meaning. When you use a word to mean an opposite sense or the opposite of the literal meaning, it is called antiphrasis. For example, it was a sweet revenge. Revenge itself is not sweet, but here see the word sweet is used. So sweet revenge. Can a revenge be sweet? No, right? It is always cruel. But when you say sweet, here the word itself means opposite. It has an opposite meaning. That is antiphrasis. Then we have antistrophe. Antistrophe. It is the repetition of same words at the end of consecutive phrases, clauses, sentences in order to emphasize a point. When you repeat the same word at the end of a sentence, it is called antistrophe. It is used in order to emphasize a point. So there is famous line from Bible that says, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. So the word child is being repeated at the end of each phrase. That is antistrophe. Next is antithesis. Antithesis is two opposite ideas are put together in a sentence to achieve a contrasting effect. In order to achieve a contrasting effect, two opposite ideas are put together. Next is archaic or archaism. Archaic or archaism is a use of word. It's a very old-fashioned, outdated use of word that we no longer use. Archaism or archaic words are the old-fashioned use. It's very outdated. Then we have archetype. Archetype is a character who represents a certain type of person. When you say certain type of person, we use certain character. For example, when you talk about Ramayana, there is Sita. And Sita is represented as an ideal Indian woman. So this Sita is an archetype. Sita in Ramayana is considered as an archetype of the ideal Indian woman. Next is aside. Aside is a brief comment or speech in a play. It is a brief comment or speech in a play where the actors or characters say something directly to the audience or to themselves, while other characters on the stage appear not to hear. So what happens is in aside, there's a brief comment or a speech by a character, and it is said directly to the audience, not to the other characters on the stage. It is said directly to the audience, and the other characters on the stage appear to be not hearing what that person is saying. So it's a direct commentary towards the audience. Next is assonance. See, I talked about alliteration. Remember, alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds, and assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in a line. Next is atmosphere. So, it is not the atmosphere that we know. It is an overall feeling of a work. When you read a book, when you get an overall feeling, it is called atmosphere. And it is related to the tone and mood of the work. Next is ballad. Ballad is a narrative poem it's a long narrative poem. Okay, it is a long narrative poem which tells the story of love, romance, adventure, hardship. So these are called ballad. It is narrated in the form of a story. That is ballad. Next is Bildungsroman. Bildungs. Okay, what happened? Bildungsroman. Bildungsroman is a kind of story where the story of growing up of the character, often used in some kind of fiction that focuses on the growth of the main character. See, we have a character, and in Bildungsroman, we narrate the story of the character from the birth to death. The growth of the character is being narrated, psychological, moral, spiritual. That is the growth of the character from the youth to adulthood. That is Bildungsroman. Charles Dickens' David Copperfield is a Bildungsroman. Jane Austen's Emma is a Bildungsroman. These are examples of Bildungsroman. Blank verse. Blank verses, unrhymed lines of poetry in iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is a form of it's used in poetry. Okay, iambic is used in poetry. Iambic is metric foot in poetry. It's a foot in poetry. Like we talked about Anapest, right? Yeah, we talked about Anapest. Two unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Iambic is one unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. We'll just discuss about it when we reach I. So blank verses, unrhymed lines of poetry in iambic pentameter. Then next word is caesura. Caesura is a stop. It's a pause. It's a stop. It's a pause in a line of poetry, either in the middle or end of a line. When you read a poetry, either at the end of the line or at the middle of the line, there will be a short pause. That short pause is called caesura. Next is canon. So canon means it's a yardstick of reference. Canon is a yardstick of reference. Unit 1. Nobody taught you Unit 1, right? I'm just saying this is the first class of this course, right? I'm just making sure. Somebody asked me the unit number. So this is the first class of this course, no? Someone please say something very fast.
Yes, ma'am. It's the first
Yes,
class.
Okay, then it's fine. Unit 1. Now,
Yes.
when someone asks
Madam,
me, unit number,
madam,
I will be
first year English literature, madam.
second semester. You are in second semester, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Second
Yeah.
semester, madam. Yeah, English literature.
Introduction to English literature, yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
First year, na, madam?
Yeah.
First year, second semester, ma'am is saying.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
first year, second semester. The course name is Introduction to English Literature. I told that in the beginning of the class. Got it?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So next is canon. Canon is a yardstick of reference. We will be having a lot of traditional collection of writing, and when you compare it with this traditional collection, it is called canon. Next is canto. Canto is a division in a poem. When you have a narrative or epic poem, the subdivision is called canto, consisting of 5 or more lines. You know stanza, right? Stanza is in poetry. Canto is in epic. In epic and narrative poem, the division of the subdivision is called canto. The next is caricature. Oh, sorry. Caricature. Caricature is an exaggeration of certain feature of a subject. It's an exaggeration. For example, you know cartoon, right? You might have seen a lot of cartoons. Drawing. Okay, why didn't you take the class in the last 2 sessions? Because I just got assigned today. I was not told about the class. I just got the class reference today. Don't worry, we'll complete it. We'll finish the chapters. Don't worry. So you might have seen the cartoons, the drawings. How is the drawings? Is it just like a normal drawing? No, right? It is exaggerated. There will be long nose, long hair, big eyes, big mouth. So there will be exaggerated elements. That is called caricature. Caricature itself means an exaggeration of certain features. Certain features will be exaggerated. Next is catastrophe. Catastrophe. Catastrophe is a disaster. Catastrophe is a disaster or a misfortune. It is usually comes in literary devices when there is a disastrous event, when something very misfortunate happens. That's notable disaster. It is called catastrophe. In tragedy, it means a resolution or denouement. And catastrophe in a tragedy means it is the resolution. Next is catharsis. This is a very important word because this you will come across this word. You will come across most of the word. Catharsis is used in tragedy. Again, it is used in tragedy. It is a cleaning process. It is cleaning or purging of emotions. Cleaning of emotions in which the characters get liberated from pity, fear, anxiety, tension, etc. So when the audience watches the tragedy, there will be pity, there will be fear, there will be anxiety, there will be tension, and all these, we will be liberated from all these. There will be a cleansing process. Cleansing of emotion is called catharsis. Cleansing of emotion is called catharsis. Next is circumlocation. Circumlocation. Circumlocution is a roundabout way of saying something. When you say something, when you say very ambiguously, very paradoxically, in a roundabout way, it is called circumlocution. You might be familiar with Harry Potter. See, Harry Potter, the villain character is Voldemort, right? Nobody tells his name. They say him, you know who, or he who must not have not be named. So nobody tells his name directly, but they tell about him in a roundabout way. That is circumlocution. Next is cliche. Cliche is a very overused, it's an expression that has been overused to an extent that it loses its original meaning. When someone uses it most often, it loses its original meaning. It is called cliche. Next is climax. Climax is what? Climax is the point when the action of the story reaches at its emotional peak. When you are reading or watching a play or story, when the action that is taking place in the story reaches its emotional peak, it is called climax. Next is colloquialism. Colloquialism is a Latin use word which means conference or conversation. So it is a very informal way of usage, or everyday language in literature is called colloquialism. When you use everyday language, it is called colloquialism. Next is conceit. Conceit is a comparison method. Okay, it is again a comparison where you compare two most unlikely objects, two dissimilar objects. When two dissimilar objects are being compared, it is called conceit. So, for example, there is mainly used in metaphysical poetry. There's a poem called A Valediction Forbidding Mourning by John Donne. And he compares the lovers with the two legs of a compass. You have seen a compass, right? Yeah, compass. Geometry box mein hota hai na? Geometry box mein you will have a compass. And where in one end you will put a pencil and the other end is very sharp. You will put the sharp end and you will draw a circle. So that compass. So there will be two legs and it is attached to a certain point. So in this poem, he compares the two legs of the compass to the lovers. Two lovers. See, lovers and compass, two entirely dissimilar objects. So when two entirely dissimilar objects are compared, it is called conceit. Next is conflict. Conflict is the element that creates a plot. The story will have a plot. And the play or story, whatever you read, it has a plot. And that plot is originated from a conflict. It is the basic element. Okay, it can be internal conflict or external conflict. It will be conflict between characters or a person with the society or with the nature or the conflict within oneself. So it's an element that creates a plot. Next is connotation. Connotation is an implicit or indirect meaning. It is an indirect meaning in a... See, the opposite of connotation, opposite is X, right? Denotation. Denotation is the direct meaning. Denotation is the literal meaning. When you say what is dictionary meaning. So it's a dictionary or literal or direct or explicit meaning is called denotation. The opposite of denotation is connotation. That is the indirect meaning. Okay. Next is consonants. Consonants is the repetition of consonant sounds. You know, we have consonants and vowels. Consonants is the repetition of consonant sounds in the beginning, middle, and end of a word. You know that. But the butter is bitter, battered and shattered and tattered. See here the word b and t is being repeated. The consonant sounds, repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning, middle, and end of a word is called consonants. Okay. Next is dactyl. So dactyl is also another metric food which has 3 syllables. 3 syllables. First one is accented, followed by 2 are unscented. That means we have first stressed syllable followed by 2 unstressed syllable. That is dactyl. Then we have denotation. Denotation I don't have to type. No? We already know denotation. Denotation is the literal meaning. Next is denouement. Denouement is a resolution of the conflict. I said there will be a conflict. And denouement is the resolution. When the conflict is resolved, it is called a denouement. The resolution of the conflict after the climax is called denouement. Then next is dicope. Dicope is the repetition of a word or a phrase. Dicope is a repetition of a word or a phrase. For example, horror, horror, the horror of it. See, the word horror is being repeated. So the repetition of a word is called dicope. Next is dissonance. Dissonance means the lack of harmony or disagreement. If there is a disagreement, there's a lack of harmony. It is not pleasant. It is called dissonance. Next is doppelganger. Doppelganger. It's a very common word, right? Doppelganger means a same lookalike person. A person's double. A person who looks like the same person. If there is a person who looks exactly like you, it is called doppelganger. Next is double entree. Double entree. Double entree means words or phrases with multiple meaning. If a word or a phrase has multiple meaning, it is called double entree. Okay, here's a question. Are alliteration and consonants similar? It is not similar. Alliteration is the repetition of words in the first consonant. I mean, it will be in the repetition of first consonant. Means in a word, it comes at the first letter. The first letter will be the consonant. Whereas in consonants, it is in the middle. It can be at the beginning, middle, or at the end. Oh, please don't draw. Please don't draw on the board. Clear? Alliteration is the repetition of consonants, and these consonants will be the first consonants. Whereas consonants is the repetition of consonant words, and it will be repeated in the beginning, end, middle, wherever they want. Not. Okay, double entree is the word or phrases with multiple meaning. I don't draw. Next is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is a situation in which an audience watching a play knows something that the character on the stage doesn't know. So when the character on the stage doesn't know, they are not aware of, but the audience knows. That is dramatic irony. Next is dramatic monologue. Dramatic monologue is it's a kind of poem. Okay, dramatic monologue is a kind of poem where there's a character, the fictional character will directly address someone. It is addressing to someone, but we don't know, that person is not shown. We know the identity, but it's not shown. There will be addressing to some person, and that addressee will not be shown on the stage or on the entire play. Next is diphemism. Diphemism. Diphemism is a negative expression used to humiliate someone. When you want to humiliate someone, when you want to disapprove with someone, you say something. That negative expression is called a diphemism. Next is dystopia. Dystopia is an unperfect or imperfect world. So it's an imperfect negative world where everything is nightmarish, everything is wrong, everything is so not perfect. That world is called dystopian world, opposite of a perfect world. The perfect world is called utopia. The opposite is utopia. Utopia is the perfect world where everything is so good, everything is very good, it's very perfect. Opposite of utopia is dystopia, which is an imperfect world. Next is elegy. Elegy is a narrative form. It's a poem about death, mourning the death. When someone is dead, if the poet is mourning the death of someone, it is called elegy. Next is elision. Elision is the removal of an unstressed syllable, consonant, or letter from a word. When you say something and when you remove an unstressed syllable, it is called elision. For example, I'll tell you, never. Never is a word. But when you write never as N-E-V apostrophe R, this is also read as never. So that E word, E is be taken away. That is called elision. Removal of unstressed syllable. Next is ellipsis. Ellipsis means omission of words. When you omit some words, omit some sentences, and instead you use dots, you use a punctuation mark. It is called ellipsis. When you say something very long and you don't want to say a lot of things, you just put 3 dots. That is called ellipsis. Next is end rhyme. End rhyme is a rhyming word at the end of 2 successive lines. At the end of 2 successive lines, there is a rhyming word. It is called end rhyme. It comes at the end of the line. That is why it is called end rhyme. Next is enjambment. Enjambment is a device, stylistic device, where it is mainly used in poetry. Okay, it is used in poetry, and here the thought runs from one line to the next without a punctuation mark. When there are 2-3 lines without any punctuation mark at the end, that means the line is continuing. The first line is continuing to the next. That is called enjambment. The continuation or the thought runs from one line to another without any punctuation mark. It is called enjambment. Next is epic. Epic is a long narrative poem. Epic is a long narrative poem about an adventure of a heroic figure. There will be heroic figure and the adventure of that heroic figure. We have 2 epics in India. Do you know? Ramayana and Mahabharata are the 2 epics in India. It is the adventure of a heroic figure. And Homer's Odyssey, Iliad, Odyssey, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, these are examples of epic. Next is epigram. Oh, no. Next is epigram. Epigram is a brief, interesting, witty, and striking statement. It's a very brief, interesting statement. That is called epigram. Next is epigraph. Epigraph is a placing of a quotation mark. Placing of a quotation mark, or we are quoting another writer, it is called epigraph. When you quote another writer at the beginning of your work, it is called epigraph. Next is epilogue. Epilogue is after the end of the story, there will be a small details at the end. It is called epilogue. The opposite of epilogue is prologue. Not opposite, but prologue comes in the beginning. Before starting the story, there will be a prologue. And epilogue is at the end of the story. There will be 1, 2, 3 pages where the loose ends will be connected. Or even if the story is dissatisfied, it will be like just saying, this all things happened after this. That is called epilogue. Next is epiphany. Epiphany. Epiphany is a moment in a story where the characters get a revelation. They get a new light. It's an understanding which makes a turning point. Epiphany is a turning point because at the moment they get a revelation, they learn something new. Next is epistolary. Epistolary is a form of writing where it is written in the form of letters, diary entries, journal entries, etc. That's epistolary novel. Samuel Richardson's novel Pamela is an example of epistolary novel. Here, the story is narrated through letters or diaries. That is called epistolary. Next is epistrophe. It is a repetition of phrases or words at the end of sentences. It is also called epiphora. Next is epitaph. Epitaph is a writing, inscription on the grave. When someone dies, there's a grave, and when you write something on the grave, it is called epitaph. Like in Keats, it's like, here lies one whose name was writ in water. Here lies this person. So it's written on the grave. That is epitaph. Next is epithet. Epithet is the use of descriptive word or adjective phrase in order to criticize or praise someone. When you want to criticize or praise someone, when you use some descriptive word, it is called epithet. Next is eponym. Eponym is a name of a, when you say the name of a real or legendary character and whose name is also the title of the book, it is called eponym. When the name of a person, it can be a real or legendary person, when the name of the character appears as the title of the book or the name of the city or the time period or the age or the idea, it is called eponym. For example, Homer's book, Odyssey. It is the story of Odysseus. Elizabethan age, the age of Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth. Ramayana, it's the story of Ram. How about the icons? So when the name of a person appears in the title of the book, the name of the city, it is called eponym. Next is ethos. Ethos is a set of ideas or attributes which are associated with a particular group of people. The ethos is a set of ideas attributed to certain group of people. Next is eulogy. Eulogy is the word of praise when someone is dead, when someone is when someone is died, deceased. It can be either living or deceased, but usually eulogy is said on a death period when someone has died or living. When you want to praise someone, you say something that is called eulogy. Eulogy is a praise, word of praise for someone. Next is euphemism. Euphemism. Euphemism is an indirect way of saying something. It's very impolite. It's very impolite, harsh, unpleasant, offensive way of saying something. It is called euphemism. It's a very impolite, harsh way of saying something. Next is euphony. Euphony is the use of word or phrases that will be very pleasant, sweet. See, euphemism is very unpleasant. Euphony is very pleasant way of saying something. Next is exaggeration. Exaggeration is a way of saying something. Exaggerating, way of making something very big. You are saying something than what it is actually is. It will be very small, but you exaggerate it and say something, it is very big. That is exaggeration. Next is expletive. Expletive means a rude word. It's a very rude way of saying. When you're angry, annoyed, or excited, you say something very rude. That is called expletive. Next is exposition. Exposition. Exposition is a part of play or novel in which the theme and main characters are introduced. In the exposition, the theme is introduced, the characters are introduced. It's a part of the play or novel where all these themes and characters are introduced. That is called exposition. Next is fable. Fable is another type of story. Fable is a type of story that illustrates moral using animals. When you have animal characters, and through the animal characters, when you are saying something When you narrate a story with a moral, it is called fable. So the same story, the tortoise and the hare, that's a fable. Next is fallacy. Fallacy is a mistaken belief. It is a mistaken belief based on incorrect information. When you have an incorrect information and you believe that it is true, it is called fallacy. It's a mistaken belief. Next is falling action. Falling action means just takes just after the climax. Usually happens in tragedy, in a story or action, takes place just after the climax. And this falling action leads to resolution. Next is fantasy. Fantasy is an act of imagining things, especially a pleasant situation. When you imagine something very pleasant, it is called fantasy. Next is farce. Farce is a kind of comedy. Farce is a kind of comedy that is based on highly improbable situation. It is mainly to entertain people through comedy, physical humor, drunkenness, jokes, highly absurd situation. That kind of comedy is called farce. Next is fiction. Fiction is any literature that contains imaginary people and events. That is called fiction. Novel is a fiction. Short story is a fiction. When you have imaginary people and events, it is called fiction. Next is figurative language. Figurative language. The language or word, we use some language or word that do not exactly what they say. For example, when someone is very angry, you say it's steaming. Actually, steaming is not actually correct, right? Steaming, that's not, when you steam something, there will be smoke coming out, steam coming out. When a person is steaming, that doesn't comes out any smoke, no smoke is coming out of the person, but still we use the term steaming in order to say that person is very angry. That is figurative language. Next is figure of speech. Figure of speech is a phrase or a word that has more meaning than the literal meaning. Than the literal meaning, it has more meaning. We used to compare things, we used to describe things using figure of speech. Figure of speech is very important when you study poetry, and when you deal with poetry in detail, you will come across figure of speech again. Simile, metaphor, irony, pun, or example of figure of speech. Next is first person point of view. First person point of view is narrator refers himself as I. When the story starts, I went there and I saw this. When there's I, it is called first person. You have second person. Second person is using he and she. He was there or she went there. That is second person point of view. Third person is you. Using you. Next is flash forward. Flash forward is when you say something and you just go a lot like forward. There is a story in the future. It is called flash forward. The opposite of flash forward is flashback. Flashback, you know, right? When you say something, when you go back, we return to the past event. When you talk about the past, it is called flashback. When you talk about the future, it is called flash forward. Flashback, flash forward. Next is flat character. There are different types of character like flat character, round character. Flat character is a character in the novel who remains unchanged. Throughout the story, this character does not change. Whereas a round character changes. The round character changes, whereas flat character does not change. Next is foil. Foil is a kind of comparison. When you compare two different characters, people, or thing, it is called foil. Next is folklore. Folklore is traditional stories. It is traditional customs, traditional habits of a particular country or particular community or particular people. It is called folklore. Next is foot. Foot is the unit of measurement in poetry. See, I said iambic pentameter, it's a metrical foot. Foot means the measurement in poetry. It is made up of stressed and unstressed syllable. Next is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a technique in which the author gives clues about something that will happen later in the story. When there is something going to happen in the story and the author gives you some hints or clues, it is called foreshadowing. So when you get these two clues, you know that something is going to happen. That is foreshadowing. Next is frame story. Frame story is a story within a story. Frame story is story within a story. Next is free verse. Free verse is a poetry with no meter, no rhyme, no rhyme scheme, no rhythm, no meter. It's very free. That is called free verse. Next is genre. Genre is a field of literature or art. Poetry, prose, fiction are different literary genres. And they have subcategories like mystery novels, detective novels, crime fiction novels. These are examples of genre. It is a field of art. Next is half rhyme. Half rhyme. Half rhyme is a poetic device in which the stressed syllable of an ending consonants match. So in the ending, we will have a consonant sound, and the ending of the consonant has a stressed syllable. That is called half rhyme. When the ending of the consonant has a stressed syllable, it is called half rhyme. Next is hamartia. Hamartia, you will come across hamartia again because it's a very important word, hamartia. It is the tragic flow. There's a weakness in the character. There's a weakness for the tragic flow of the protagonist is called hamartia, and this hamartia leads to the downfall of the character. That is, it usually comes in tragedy. That is hamartia. Next is homily. Homily means a kind of speech or a writing where there's a moral instruction. There's a moral instruction or a lecture or with something saying how to behave. That is homily. Next is homograph. Homograph is a word that has same spelling but different meaning. Same spelling, different meaning. For example, the word cross. I am saying the word cross. What does the word cross means? It means to cross the road, right? Or you put a cross mark. It means it's wrong. It is angry, or you can say cross means angry. Or the crucifix, the cross in which Jesus Christ is crucifixed. So there's different meaning. A same word, different meaning. That is homograph. Next is homophone. Same, no? Homophone is a word that has different spelling but same, different spelling and meaning but same pronunciation. The spelling will be different, the meaning will be different but has same pronunciation. See, you pronounce it as ear. This is also ear. Both are pronounced as ear, but spelling is different, meaning is different. Next is hubris. Hubris means an excessive pride and arrogance of the protagonist. If the protagonist is very arrogant, if the character has excessive pride, and that brings the downfall, it is called hubris. Hubris is a hamartia. Next is hyperbole. Oh, sorry, hyperbole. Hyperbole is an exaggeration. Okay, hyperbole means exaggeration. It's a huge exaggeration. That is called hyperbole. Then hypothetical question. Hypothetical question means a question that is based not on facts but on superstition. It is superstition. It is based on belief. It is not fact-based. It is not fact-based, but it is based on the belief or the opinion or supposition. That is called hypothetical question. Is it clear? Did you understand anything?
Yes,
Time,
ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
We have
yes,
only
madam.
1 hour, no? Okay. Read the textbook, okay? We have only 1 hour. So it's time. We can continue it tomorrow. Okay. If you don't have any doubts, we can end the session.
No doubts, ma'am.
Okay, then. Thank you. Okay. Thanks. We'll continue the class tomorrow.
హలో, ఎవరైనా ఉన్నారా లైన్ లో? హలో హలో
హలో
హలో సెకండ్ సెమిస్టర్ ఎగ్జామ్స్ ఎప్పుడో తెలుసా అండి?
తెలియదు.
సెకండ్ సెమిస్టర్ ఎగ్జామ్స్
ఆగస్టు ఎండింగ్.
ఆగస్ట్
ఎండింగ్
ఎండింగ్. ఎందుకు ఇంత తొందరగా పెడుతున్నారు?
ఏమో తెలియదు.
జూలై అన్నారు కదా, జూలై ఫస్ట్ సెకండ్ వీక్ లో.
కాదు,
ఆగస్ట్ ఎండింగ్ లోనా? కరెక్టేనా అండి?
ఏమో నా కూడా అనుకోలేదు. కూడా
కొంచెం కనుక్కొని చెప్తారా అండి?
అవును చెప్తా.
మీ పేరు?
మీ గణేష్.
గణేష్.
మీ పేరండి?
నా పేరు భాగ్యలక్ష్మి.
అవును. ఏం చేస్తారు?
నేను హౌస్ వైఫ్ నండి.
అవును. ఓకే ఓకే.
కొంచెం చెప్పరా అండి ఎగ్జామ్స్ ఎప్పుడు? నాకు సడన్ గా చెప్పారు జూలై సెకండ్ వీక్ లో అంటే కొంచెం టెన్షన్ గా ఉంది.
అదే నా కూడా టెన్షన్ ఉంది.
ఓన్లీ ఏంటి ఇప్పుడే క్లాసెస్ నడుస్తున్నాయి, సెకండ్ వీక్ లోనే ఎగ్జామ్ అంటే ఇంగ్లీష్ కొంచెం టఫ్ గానే ఉంటది కదా, అందుకు కొంచెం టెన్షన్ గా ఉంది. కొద్దిగా ఎగ్జామ్స్ ఎప్పుడో కనుక్కొని చెప్తారా?
అనుకుని చెప్తాను.
సరే అండి, థ్యాంక్ యూ అండి.
ఓకే.